Well, guys, I don't know if you can tell or not, but there are some new things back here that we've been working on. Go for it. If you're new here, I'm Bree, and I try to grow as much food in my backyard as I possibly can. So every year I kind of reevaluate my space and see exactly where I might be able to add a little bit more. And the trellis tunnel is one of those areas that we've been working on over the last few weeks. We still need to build an additional bed area for these sides, but we added 2 more cattle panels to the trellis. So the trellis tunnel used to be 20 feet long and now it's 28 foot long. And this will just allow me to grow even more in this space. It will also just give me a lot more privacy during the summer months. Once this does fill up, this will add an extra 8 feet of about 7-8 feet in height toward the back of my backyard, which adds a lot of privacy during the summer months, which I really love. So what we ended up doing was we took the 2 cattle panels that we had in the front garden beds last year, because we actually had to bend these and put them on top of an SUV roof because we didn't have a truck at the time. And I think it was last weekend we bought 3 more cattle panels, and we do have a truck now, so we didn't have to fully smash them in half and have to unbend them. So those ones over there look a lot nicer than these ones over here, but once they're filled up, you really can't tell the imperfections of these. But you may have heard me say we bought 3 more, which we did. We added 3 more cattle panels to the space this year, and it's completely changing up my entire front space entirely. So I am completely rewriting my plans, and I'm trying to think of a few other areas I might be able to add in some more growing space. All right, so over here we put 3 cattle panels in those 4 beds, which I'm really excited about, because when these fill out as well, they are going to just give me even more privacy, which I'm super hyped about. So with having these 3 here in the front, it's really making me rethink a lot of my plans, because I want this to be as symmetrical as possible. I'm thinking I want to have sunflowers kind of at each pillar, but this is changing up the whole plan because this is going to take up a lot more room. I was originally thinking I was only going to have a trellis right here, and then we were like, hey, let's just add 2 more. So as of right now, we have these 3 beds of garlic. This was going to be all peppers. This was going to be all tomatoes. I have my onions and strawberries here. But now what I'm thinking, because I want this to be as uniform, and I think if I put peppers along this strip here, I won't be able to do that. So I am going to leave this blank for now. I think peppers will go here and also here, but this back corner is where we're thinking we might be able to add some more. All right, you're gonna have to excuse the mess over here because this is very much still a work in progress. So we had a bunch of wood. We cut down 3 trees in 2021, and we had a surplus of wood. So this whole back side was a bunch of extra wood. The whole other side of the shed there was extra wood, and we had a ton of wood over there. We consolidated it. We moved it to the other corner because this is a very prime location. I don't know if you can tell or not, but this is getting really good sun right now. This shed does kind of block out some of that sun for some of that summer, but this actually gets really decent sun, and this is one of my prime locations for sun as well. So what I'm currently thinking, and this is going to be probably the bigger project for the spring, I'm adding a lot more work to my spring right now than I originally anticipated, because I really just decided on all of these additions about a week or 2 ago. So we really got to hit the ground running over the next handful of weeks to get new garden beds in place, to get soil and get things ready. So I am going to leave this where my bird bath is. I have a bunch of yarrow and echinacea here, and I really like that because it's just a very native spot, wildlife spot. It comes back every year. I don't have to plant it. Beautiful flowers. But what I am thinking is I'm probably going to move these grow bags completely somewhere else, maybe over there, use that for additional peppers as well. But I'm thinking I'm going to have my husband build, and I assist, a big L garden bed where it goes down about 14-15 feet over this way. It'd be about 3-4 feet wide, and then it's going to corner out through here, which this is roughly like 9 or 11 feet. I can't remember the exact, but doing an L like this will give me additional tomato room and additional pepper room, which is what I'm actually needing at the moment. And that L will give me the exact space I kind of need. And it will actually just really maximize my space. This is kind of a dead space, and this is one of my better sunlight spaces. So I feel like I haven't utilized this little corner as well as I could have since we've done the remodel, because we did a huge remodel in 2021 after we got a big tree that was dead right here cut down. And speaking of trees cut down, let me take you to the other corner. So this is the other corner of the yard that is not used the best it could be. I did have my chicken fence over here and I did reroute it, but I'm thinking I want to have more of a permanent style fence for the chickens that comes out a little bit further and leave that space open for perennial where I currently have them scratching up weeds. I obviously need to get all of this figured out. This is a bunch of random sticks that ended up falling over because there was a tree right over here that was super dead that got cut down a few weeks ago, and that actually has caused me to have way better lighting over here, to where I'm thinking if I do build this chicken fence, I either could build a really long strip that was either 2 to 3 feet wide and roughly like 10 to 15 feet long, and I could grow potatoes in that, or do another strip of peppers or tomatoes or flowers. But I could also add roughly a 4x4 or a 5x5 box right here, to where I think those are going to be the additional areas we try to add into the garden space this year. And at that point, I think I will truly have this space a lot more maximized than I have in the past. But I also now have a lot more room on my patio space since we cleared out all that wood, where I've been finding a lot of really nice ceramic and cement pots through estate auctions, estate sales, garage sales, all things like that. And I've been really stocking up on my pots, to where I might do like a whole strip of pots over there. I am just truly trying to find every nook and cranny of this backyard and figure out a way to fill it. That means I definitely have my work cut out for me over the next month, because I will be planting out a lot of my frost tender things that first week of May. And honestly, our spring has been so beautiful that I might go ahead and start direct sowing a few more of my frost tender things, even though like my tomatoes, I definitely probably won't plant out till that first week of May because they're just too little at this point. I do think we have a random cold dip this week, but otherwise, I don't think we're reaching freezing or anything still. But yeah, that's kind of what I've been up to over the last like week and a half. I have not posted, and it's simply because I'm trying to figure out all of my garden plans, what needs done, and what else I need to do. I've been cleaning up a lot of wood and moving a lot of wood, and that is what I still have left to do. But that is not what we're going to work on today. I have a bunch of very little random things I really need to do in this garden, and I'm thinking what I'm going to do first is the thing I've been dreading the most, which is weeding this trellis space, because it's really bad. All right, this is what I'm going to tackle first. This is terrible. This might be the worst it has honestly truly ever been. So I am growing loofah, and I am thinking I'm gonna grow a cuckoozy gourd. I think that's how it's said. I'm drawing like a blank on it at the moment, but if you have like any favorite melons, bean varieties, or maybe like squash or gourd that is vine borer resistant. Gourd tends to be vine borer resistant, but squash varieties are very tricky. The only one I have found that has actually worked really well in my garden, it's the honey nut squash. It's a butternut hybrid. It's a lot smaller. They're a little bit more personal in size, but I've grown those for a few years. Last year I did take off on those, but I'm thinking I might grow those again this year. It's just I really have a squash bug problem here as well, and those gave me hell in 2023 for like 3 or 4 months, to where I was like, I need to not grow squash at all in this garden in 2024. And I only grew one plant, and honestly it was like a small one I had covered with insect netting, and it ended up working out pretty well. I did not have really any issue with squash bugs last year, but I am thinking I might grow that honey nut again. I really like it. It's very flavorful. I used it as a replacement for pumpkin in a ton of different recipes, but that one is vine borer resistant. It has a vine a lot like a gourd, so if you have vine borer issues, it's a pest that will lay its eggs at the base of the squash, and what it does is those larvae end up eating at the insides of the vine. And what ends up happening is you pretty much don't know they're there until it's a little too late. And you typically will end up seeing your squash plant wilt and die. And honestly, they are a huge problem for me here in Kansas. Typically, I don't have much of an issue if I plant them late in the season. So if I plant a plain Jane Black Beauty zucchini come like July into August, I can typically get harvest from that. But at that point, the adult vine borer are pretty much done in the area. It's really sad because I really want to grow pumpkin and have like this really beautiful pumpkin trellis. It's just I have not figured out exactly how to really fight vine borer without having to get pesticides involved, which there are organic pesticides that people will use for vine borer, and maybe I just need to kind of test my things this year. But if you have any varieties that grow vertically and they have a lot of foliage, they vine, they're a little bit crazy, please let me know, because I'm trying to figure out a few of those things that I might not have that I might need to get ordered during this time. But I am going to get all of this stuff weeded, and then I am actually going to take soil samples from this area. I honestly expect this area to be probably the lowest in nitrogen of the garden, which maybe it won't be, because last year I had a ton of green beans planted over here and they really help with nitrogen fixation. But every year I've grown loofah, typically like the nitrogen is super depleted in this soil. But I'll be really curious to see how this soil is, because last year was the first year I did foliar feeds. So hopefully the soil isn't as bad as it was in previous years. Oh yeah, I was weeding this other area the other day and I was like, what is popping up over here? If you guys recall, last summer I had, was it 4 or 5 wild sunflowers pop up in the garden? So they were wild volunteer sunflowers, and they were massive. These things had to be roughly 11, 12 feet tall, and they had so many blooms on them. There was just zero way I could keep up with deadheading them. And I'm over here, I'm weeding. I'm like, this is hundreds of sunflowers popping up right now. I was like, oh, this is gonna be interesting to see where sunflowers pop up this year. I believe in my last video, I mentioned to you guys how I haven't seen a single grub yet. There's the first one. And it doesn't surprise me, it's in this space over here, but we are gonna give this to the chickens. If you ever see a grub, pick it out of your soil. This is not a fun little pest to have. Come here, girlies. Who wants it? I don't know where it went. It's gonna end up, well, oh, there it is. Get it. Ah, good job. Having the chickens for pest control, honestly, is so much fun. Wow. Oh gosh, it was just 2. It's like a set of pom-poms. Woo! Whoa, that's a good root. That is a big bucket of weeds from this little area. Let's go dump this over at the chickens. Have fun. I ended up getting a whole second bucket's worth. And this kind of just goes to show you that these plants can really be soaking up your nutrients from your soil if you don't get on top of it quickly. I do still need to pull, looks like a few in this garlic bed, and then I'm gonna go dump this to the chickens as well. Typically, I don't have to do a lot of weeding. I mean, I do have to do decent weeding throughout the year, but springtime is kind of the big one because I get really lazy with it at the end of summer into early fall, and then there ends up just being more weeds that overwinter in my garden. So there's always more I need to pull during this time of year, but this will suck up nutrients from your garden, so pull your weeds. Best time to do it is after a good rain. We got a really good rain the other day, so the soil ends up being a little bit more moist and it's a lot easier to pull the weed up. You can get the root a lot easier when the soil is moist and not as compact and dry. I do need to get the garlic fed tonight. It's been, I think, 10 or 11 days. I've been doing it every 10-ish days. This will be the third feeding for it. I should start seeing some escapes on the hard neck varieties in about 4 or 5 weeks. But look, we have another sunflower, and that just might be a Goldie, since Goldies were right in this corner. Might have to leave that. I have these bags of sand that I'm going to take over to the chicken coop and put at the base of their coop. So I just use all-purpose sand. I believe you aren't supposed to do like play sand or anything like that. You want it to have some grit to it. That way, if they peck at it and stuff, it can almost act as a grit in their stomach. But these little bags are tiny, but they weigh 50 pounds a piece, and they're just awkward. I typically will top off the sand in their coop once, twice a year with a few bags. Hopefully I can wheelbarrow all of this. I feel like might be a bit heavy. It's heavy. We got it. Whoops. Just take a box cutter and cut an X in it real quick and dump. Looks like we had one girl lay outside the nest box. Three for the day. Honestly, after 8 years, I am shocked I'm still making this many tweaks to the garden. I really haven't done too much in the last 4 years. In 2021, we did a complete overhaul of the garden because I was just adding on slowly. My first year gardening, I had one garden bed and a handful of planters. And then every year I was adding 1 or 2 garden beds. And by 2020, we added in the in-ground space. But 2021, we did a complete overhaul of the garden because that's when the tree was cut down. And when the tree was cut down, we completely took down all of our old garden beds and reconfigured everything. And we really didn't add much else outside of that except for the chickens. And I really haven't done much else other than replacing some grow bags and adding some grow bags. So this year seems really exciting just because I'm really excited to add that big L garden bed. I have been wanting to do something different with that space for so many years now, and I think this is a really good solution that would also just be really, really cool. Because I also think, like, not this year because I need that space for peppers and tomatoes with the way I'm planning on everything this year. I think it'd be really cool to add some trellis netting to that L, and then you have this really cool underhang like area with the shed, and it'd really cool down that area because it's a really hot and sunny area. So I think that is really fun, and just, I don't know, just being a little bit more creative with some of my space. One of my biggest tips for you is if you are getting started, start small and add on. Gardening can get overwhelming pretty quickly, but also really watch your sunlight and the way it shifts throughout the season. You will notice every season the sun will be a little bit different in your garden, but you're going to have main areas that get a lot more sunshine, and you're going to have areas that you're going to have to kind of play around with a little bit. Where the chickens currently are is an area I have really played around with for the last 4 years because it's an area that truly shades out way more once we get into the summer months. I have a maple tree right here that is honestly pretty big, and then I have an elm tree just south of like this little area where the chickens are. And once these leaves really fill out, this area really shades out, which is nice for the chickens because in the summertime it does help cool down this little corner of the yard, but it does really impact my growing area. So where the chickens are at, I've actually found that flowers do really well there. I've always just spread a bunch of flower seeds. That's done really well. It's done really well twice for me, but I'm thinking I'm going to kind of make that whole area a perennial area. So I have a bunch of irises I was gifted that I planted last year. I have an elderberry over there, and I also have an elderberry over here. And I'm actually thinking I want to move this elderberry over there because even though they're not too far away, I did have some issues with cross-pollination. And I need both those plants to cross each other to where I can get berries. So I want to move this elderberry closer. I want to have the chickens over here for probably like the next week. And then I'm going to reconfigure their fencing to where kind of like how I had it, but a little bit differently. But I do want to build like an actual permanent fence for them just because I really hate dealing with this netting. It's nice to be able to move it and to give them different spaces to access, but I just really don't fully enjoy the netting. It works well and it's worked really well for me for a few years, but I just want something that looks a little nicer. And I also can only configure this fence like a few certain ways, and there's ways I could utilize a few other areas a little bit if I just built out a fence. So that is kind of the plan throughout the summer. I'm really hoping to get I'm hoping to get at least that L garden bed built in roughly the next like 2 weeks. And then if I can, build something else over here before May 1st. So we will see how that goes. I also will have a ton of space opening where that garlic is. So currently right now I'm trying to fully finalize my garden plans and plan my full succession sowing for the year, and it just takes a lot of like little planning, especially now that I'm like I added in those trellises and it's completely throwing off where I had other things placed at the beginning of the season. I always feel like it gets warm and then I have a million ideas that I want to do, and that's one reason I think I have such a hard time garden planning during the winter, because I just can't visualize it unless I'm like in it. And once I'm in it, I'm like, oh, that would do so well over here. So definitely keep an eye on your sunlight. I think that is so important. Again, you'll see it shift throughout the seasons, but you'll get a better idea on where you can add on, especially if you're new to gardening and your whole space isn't filled up like mine is. That will really help you out a lot. If you guys want to see what the garden looks like in 2020 before we got chickens and did a complete remodel, I do have videos from that year. I can't promise you that they're good videos, but they're there and you guys can see how the whole space was laid out before we redid everything. Come on, girls, let's go in. You ready? Here, let me put some of this in here. Ready? Come on, let's go in. Let's go. Come on. Yep, let's go, honey. Go get your friends. Come on. Go get your friends. Come on. That is the wrong direction, girl. Come on, go get your friends. Go ahead. Good job. I am going to be feeding everything tonight. So I mixed up 1.5 gallons. I'm gonna do 1/3 of a cup. This is just the fish and seaweed fertilizer I always use. And I'm gonna go around and spray stuff. I always think it smells like a lake fish marina after I do this, but it works really, really well. Apparently I didn't charge it. Nothing that an extension cord can't handle. There we go. Well guys, I think that is where I'm going to end today's video. Very random, I know, but I just wanted to pick up the camera and say hello. It's been a little bit longer than I traditionally take, but I've just been trying to figure out what I'm doing over here and getting the littlest things done. So thank you for joining me today while I got some things done on that list. If you guys are interested, I'll link a few other videos here that you might be interested in, and I will see you guys all in the next one. Bye.